Cole Mathison's blood soaked into Colorado sand the same color it had been 3 years ago when he'd buried his wife. He'd stopped trying to plug the bullet hole in his side, stopped counting heartbeats. The sun overhead looked exactly like the one that had watched him fail everyone he'd ever loved. When rough hands grabbed his shoulders and a woman's voice cut through the darkness, sharp, foreign, alive, his last thought before surrendering was simple: let it end. Let me finally be done. But the desert had other plans. And so did she. Before we continue Cole's journey into the unknown, hit that subscribe button and join our frontier family. Stay with us until the very end. This story takes turns you won't see coming. And drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from so we can see how far our tales travel across this wild country. Now, let's return to that moment when everything changed. The ambush had happened fast. Cole had been tracking the Dawson gang for 6 days, following their trail through scrub pine and red rock, getting close enough to smell their campfire smoke. He'd promised Martha Grayson he'd bring back the men who'd killed her husband and 2 sons. Promised he'd make it right, even though nothing ever got made right in this country. The first bullet caught him in the side before he'd even cleared the ridge. Cole hit the ground, rolling rifle flying from his grip. His horse screamed and bolted. 3 men materialized from behind a rock formation, not the Dawsons. Somebody else. Drifters, maybe, or deserters. The kind of men who'd shoot first, because asking questions was a luxury they couldn't afford. "Got his horse," one of them called out. "Check if he's worth robbing." Cole's hand found his revolver, but his fingers wouldn't grip right. Blood made everything slippery. He managed to fire twice before the second bullet punched through his shoulder and the world tilted sideways. Boots crunched toward him. Still breathing. "You want to finish him?" "Waste of ammunition. Desert'll do it for free." They took his gun, his canteen, his boots, left him bleeding in the dirt like discarded trash. Cole listened to them ride off on his horse, their laughter fading into wind and silence. He tried to stand, made it to his knees before his body informed him that was as far as he'd get. The sun climbed higher. Cole's thoughts drifted to his wife, Sarah. Not the Apache woman who'd find him, he didn't know about her yet. His Sarah. The one who'd died screaming his name while he was 50 miles away, too late. Always too late. Their baby had died with her. Some kind of fever that swept through the regiment's camp. He'd held her cold hand and known that every promise he'd ever made was just words dissolving in air. After that, he'd stopped making promises, except to Martha Grayson. And now he'd broken that one too. The sky darkened, but not from sunset. Shadows moved across his vision, birds maybe, vultures circling. Cole closed his eyes and waited for it to end. "He's alive." The voice spoke a language Cole didn't understand. Female, young, close enough that he should have heard her approach but hadn't. "Barely." A second voice, older. "White man. Cavalry, probably from the saddle marks on his legs. He's been shot, recently." "Not our concern." Cole forced his eyes open. 2 women stood over him, backlit by setting sun. Both wore leather and fringe, their long hair unbound except for beaded headbands. One carried a rifle with the casual comfort of someone born holding it. The younger one couldn't have been more than 20, knelt beside him, her dark eyes scanning his wounds with clinical precision. "We leave him, he dies," the young one said, switching to English. Her accent was thick but clear. "That's generally what happens when you bleed out," the older woman replied. She hadn't lowered her rifle. "Sarah will want to question him. Sarah will want us to use better judgment than dragging dying white men into camp." The younger woman ignored this. She pressed her hand against Cole's side, checking the bullet wound. Her touch was efficient, impersonal. Cole tried to speak, but only managed a sound somewhere between a cough and a groan. "Entry and exit," she announced. "Shoulders worse, bullets still in there." "Abby, we don't have time for charity work. We have time to follow orders." Sarah said any intelligence about military movements. This man was shot today, probably within 20 miles of here. Someone's in our territory who shouldn't be. The older woman, Ruth Cole would learn later, lowered her rifle slightly. You're really going to use that argument? I'm really going to save his life and let Sarah decide if she wants to keep it. Abby pulled a canteen from her belt and forced water past Cole's cracked lips. Half of it spilled down his chin. Can you ride? Cole managed to shake his head. Can you hold on to someone who can? That was a harder question. His vision kept sliding in and out of focus, the women's faces blurring into shapes and shadows. He tried to nod, and might have succeeded. Good enough. Abby stood and whistled sharp, piercing, deliberate. 2 more women emerged from the rocks leading horses. 4 total, all armed. All watching Cole with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Ruth spoke rapidly in their language. Abby argued back. The debate lasted maybe 30 seconds before Ruth made a cutting gesture that clearly meant, fine, but this is on you. They hauled Cole upright, an experience that redefined his understanding of pain. He bit through his lip, trying not to scream. Someone got him on a horse, his back pressed against Abby's front, her arm locked around his chest like an iron bar. The last thing he remembered clearly was the horse moving and his consciousness finally mercifully giving up the fight. When Cole woke, he was indoors. Sort of. The structure around him was made of hide and wood, circular smoke hole in the ceiling, showing stars. A fire burned in the center, filling the air with the smell of sage, and something medicinal he couldn't identify. His wounds hurt less than they should have, which meant someone had treated them while he was unconscious. That thought arrived simultaneously with the realization that his wrists were bound. Cole tested the rope. Tight. Professional. His ankles were similarly secured. He was lying on blankets, shirtless, bandages wrapped around his torso and shoulder. The side wound had been stitched with small, neat sutures. The shoulder throbbed with deep, bone-level pain that suggested the bullet had come out the hard way. Don't pull the stitches! Cole's head snapped toward the voice. A woman sat cross-legged near the fire, close enough to watch him, but far enough to avoid a surprise attack. She was older than Abby, mid-50s maybe, with gray streaking through her long black hair. Her face was lined with decades of sun and hardship, her eyes sharp enough to cut. You speak English, Cole said. His voice came out rough as gravel. Better than you speak Lakota, I'd wager. The woman didn't smile. My name is Ruth Walking Bear. You're in our winter camp approximately 40 miles northwest of where you were dying. You've been unconscious for 18 hours. Cole processed this. Lakota. Mixed group. Lakota, Cheyenne, Apache. Women who had nowhere else to go after the wars. Ruth paused. Women whose men are all dead. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I'm not military, Cole said. Not anymore. The calluses on your trigger finger suggest otherwise. The healed saber scar on your thigh confirms it. Ruth tilted her head. You were cavalry, Union from the way you sit a horse, even half dead. Question is whether you still take orders from the army or whether you've decided to make your own path. Cole met her gaze. I track outlaws for bounty. The men who shot me weren't the ones I was hunting. Just got unlucky. Unlucky? Ruth's mouth twitched. Interesting word for it. What would you call it? Karma, destiny, the universe's sense of humor. She leaned forward slightly. You've spent years helping the government hunt my people. Now, you're tied up in a camp full of the survivors. If that's not cosmic irony, I don't know what is. Cole had no argument for that. Ruth stood slowly, her joints audibly protesting. She moved to the fire and ladled something from a clay pot into a wooden cup. When she brought it to Cole, the smell was sharp herbs and root vegetables and maybe bone broth. Drink, she ordered. You've lost too much blood to refuse food out of pride. Cole struggled to sit upright with bound hands. Ruth watched his efforts for a moment, then sighed and helped prop him against a bundle of furs. She held the cup to his lips. The broth was bitter and scalding, and the best thing Cole had tasted in recent memory. "Why am I tied up if you're going to nurse me back to health?" he asked between sips. "Because nursing you and trusting you are different animals entirely." Ruth set the empty cup aside. "Some of the women wanted to leave you for the coyotes. Others thought we should take what information you have and then cut your throat. I convinced them to wait for Sarah." Sarah. "Our leader. The woman who will decide whether you live or die." Ruth settled back into her seated position. "She's out scouting. Should return by morning. Until then, you're my responsibility, which means you behave, you answer questions honestly, and you don't give me a reason to regret overruling the throat-cutting faction." Cole tested the ropes again. Still tight. "And if Sarah decides I'm not worth keeping?" "Then Abby wasted good stitching thread." Ruth's expression didn't change. "But she's young. She'll learn." Footsteps approached from outside. The hide flap covering the entrance swept aside, and a woman entered carrying Cole's saddlebags, or what was left of them. She was younger than Ruth, but older than Abby, maybe late 30s, with a scar cutting through her left eyebrow and forearm muscles that spoke of years wielding weapons. She said something sharp in Lakota. Ruth responded in the same language. The scarred woman dropped Cole's belongings near the fire and stared at him with undisguised hatred. "This is Margaret," Ruth said in English. "We call her Maggie. She lost her husband and both her sons in a raid 5 years ago. White men. Cavalry deserters, actually, which means men exactly like you used to be." Maggie spat into the fire. "He stinks of the army. I can smell it from here." "I'm not," Cole started. "You're breathing. That's already more than my boys got." Maggie took a step closer, her hand resting on the knife at her belt. "Ruth says we wait for Sarah. Fine. I'm patient. But the second she gives the word, you're mine." She turned and left without waiting for a response. Ruth watched the hide flap settle back into place. "Maggie's our best hunter, best tracker, best shot in camp. She's also carrying enough grief to drown in." Ruth looked back at Cole. "Everyone here lost someone. Most lost everyone. You might want to remember that before you open your mouth." "Noted," Cole said quietly. They sat in silence while the fire crackled and popped. Outside, Cole could hear the camp settling into night women's voices, low and rhythmic, singing something that sounded like prayer. Horses nickering in a corral. Wind moving through pine trees. "How many of you are there?" Cole asked. "Enough." "Where are the children?" Ruth's expression shuddered. "There's one. Lily, 7 years old, orphaned. We took her in." She paused. "No babies, no toddlers, no future unless something changes." Cole understood what she wasn't saying. A camp of only women and one child. No men to father the next generation. No future beyond the women sitting around these fires, aging and dying, until nothing remained but stories and ghosts. "That's why you kept me alive," Cole said. "Not for information. Information's useful." Ruth stirred the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. "But yes, there are other considerations." "I'm not." Cole stopped. Started again. "I'm not a stud horse you can just pen up and use. No, you're a dying man we saved." Ruth's voice stayed level. "What happens next depends entirely on whether you see that as a gift or a trap." Before Cole could respond, a child's voice cut through the night air, high, excited, rapid Lakota. Ruth stood immediately, moving to the entrance. "Sarah's back," she said. "Earlier than expected." The hide flap swept open again. The woman who entered had to duck slightly through the opening, despite not being particularly tall. She carried herself with the kind of coiled energy that suggested she was always 3 seconds away from violence. Her long black hair was braided tightly, her buckskin clothes dark with trail dust. A rifle hung across her back. A revolver rode her hip. But it was her eyes that stopped Cole's breath. Amber. Sharp as broken glass. Tired in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep. Eyes that had seen too much and refused to look away. She swept her gaze across the space, cataloging everything: Ruth's position, Cole's bindings, the medical supplies near the fire. When her eyes finally settled on Cole, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "This is him," she said. Not a question. "This is him," Ruth confirmed. Cole Mathison. Former cavalry scout, currently bounty hunter, recently shot by persons unknown in our territory. Sarah moved closer. Cole fought the urge to press back against the furs. She crouched in front of him, studying his face with the same clinical precision Abby had used on his wounds. "You served under Colonel Chivington," she said. Cole's stomach dropped. "How did you—" "Your saddlebags. Letter addressed to you dated 1864, Sand Creek." Sarah's voice could have frozen water. "You were there. Sand Creek. The massacre. The worst thing Cole had ever witnessed, and he'd witnessed plenty. Women and children slaughtered while flying white flags. Old men shot down begging for mercy. Chivington ordering his men to kill everything that moved and then burn what was left. Cole had put a bullet in the ground instead of into the fleeing civilians. Had turned his rifle on 2 of his own soldiers when they'd cornered a group of children. He'd been court-martialed for it. Dishonorably discharged. He'd worn that dishonor like armor ever since, knowing it was the only decent thing he'd done in 4 years of war. But this woman wouldn't know that. Couldn't know that. All she knew was the name on that letter and what it meant. "I was there," Cole said quietly. "I didn't participate. I stopped men who tried. That's why they kicked me out." "Convenient story. Check the letter. It's from my wife begging me to come home because the army abandoned her when they discharged me. She died before I got there." Cole held Sarah's gaze. "I've got plenty of sins to answer for, but Sand Creek isn't one of them." Sarah stood abruptly. She spoke to Ruth in rapid Lakota. Ruth responded, gesturing at Cole, clearly arguing. Sarah cut her off with a single word that needed no translation. "No." Then she switched back to English, her attention returning to Cole like the barrel of a loaded gun. "Here's what's going to happen," Sarah said. "You're going to tell me everything you know about military movements in this territory. Patrol routes, garrison locations, supply schedules, everything. And then I decide if you're worth the food we've wasted on you." Cole studied her face, the exhaustion around her eyes, the white-knuckle tension in her jaw, the way she held herself like someone who'd forgotten how to relax years ago. This wasn't a woman making threats. This was a woman making calculations, weighing his life against her people's survival with the cold math of someone who'd made that trade too many times already. "There's a patrol," Cole heard himself say. 20 men rotating 3-day circuit between Fort Garland and the Arkansas River. They're looking for a group that hit a supply wagon last month. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Go on." "They've got a tracker. Jessup, mean as a rattlesnake and twice as patient. If he picks up your trail, he won't stop until he finds you." "How do you know this?" "Because Jessup and I worked together during the war. I know how he thinks." Cole paused. "And I saw his sign 2 days before I got shot. He's close. Maybe 30 miles southeast." The silence that followed was absolute. Ruth broke it first. "He could be lying." "He's not," Sarah said flatly. She hadn't taken her eyes off Cole. "Fear's a smell you can't fake. He's terrified Jessup's going to find us. Should be terrified of what we'll do to him if he's leading them here. He's not leading anyone anywhere. He can barely stand." Sarah finally looked away, addressing Ruth. "Double the scouts, rotating watch. If Jessup's that close, we move up the timeline." "Sarah, we're not ready. We're never ready, that's the point." Sarah moved toward the entrance, then paused. "Keep him tied, keep him fed, and keep Maggie away from him until I decide what he's worth." She left without looking back. Cole sagged against the fur's exhaustion, crashing over him like a physical weight. Ruth stood slowly, her ancient joints protesting. "You just gave her intelligence that could save lives," Ruth said. "That was smart." "Wasn't trying to be smart. Was trying to stay alive." "Same thing in this camp." Ruth moved to the fire, adding wood. "Sarah Blackwood is the best tactical mind I've ever seen. She's kept us hidden and safe for 3 years against odds that should have killed us a dozen times over. But she's running on empty. Has been since her mother died in her arms." Her mother. Chief before Sarah. Killed defending this camp from raiders. Ruth settled back onto her seat. Sarah survived. Inherited the leadership. Hasn't forgiven herself for either. Cole thought about that, about carrying the weight of survival when everyone you loved was dead. About waking up every morning knowing you should have died with them. He knew that weight. Wore it like a second skin. "Get some sleep," Ruth said. "Tomorrow Sarah will question you properly. You'll want to be sharp for it." Cole closed his eyes and listened to the camp outside. Women's voices. Fire crackling. Wind moving through trees. Somewhere in the darkness, Sarah Blackwood was planning their next move, carrying the survival of her entire people on shoulders that looked ready to break. And Cole Mathison, who'd spent 3 years trying to die properly, found himself suddenly inexplicably invested in making sure she didn't have to carry it alone. The universe's sense of humor, indeed. Dawn came with the sound of horses and urgent voices. Cole woke to Ruth cutting the ropes at his ankles, her movements quick and precise. "Get up, Sarah wants you mobile." "Why?" Cole's shoulders screamed when he tried to sit. The stitches held barely. "Because Jessup's tracker found something. We're out of time." Ruth hauled him upright with surprising strength for a woman her age. "Can you walk?" Cole tested his legs. They shook but held. "Yeah." "Can you ride?" "Have to, don't I?" Ruth's mouth twitched in something that might have been approval. She left his wrists bound, but loosened the rope enough that he could grip a saddle horn if needed. Outside the camp was organized chaos. Women struck shelters with practiced efficiency, packing supplies onto horses and travois. No wasted movement. No panic. They'd done this before. Sarah stood near the central fire pit, directing traffic in rapid Lakota. She'd changed into darker buckskin, her rifle across her back, her hair still braided tight. When she saw Cole, she crossed the distance in 4 strides. "You said Jessup thinks like you," she said without preamble. "Where would he search first?" Cole's mind worked through the terrain. Water sources, canyon mouths, anywhere that offers shelter and concealment for a group this size. "We're in a canyon," I noticed. Sarah's jaw tightened. "He'll find the entrance by noon if he's as good as you say." "He's better than I say." Cole met her eyes. "But he tracks alone. Always has. Doesn't trust partners. That's his weakness. 1 man is enough if he reports back to 20 soldiers. Not if he never makes it back." The words hung between them. Sarah studied Cole's face, searching for something, deception maybe, or hidden agenda. Whatever she saw made her turn to Ruth and speak in Lakota. Ruth nodded and disappeared into the organized chaos. "You're suggesting we kill him," Sarah said. "I'm suggesting he's a threat that needs handling. And you're volunteering to help handle him because you've suddenly developed loyalty to people you met yesterday." Sarah's voice dripped skepticism. "Or because you're looking for an opportunity to escape." Cole had no good answer for that. Truth was, he didn't know his own motivations anymore. 3 days ago, he'd been tracking outlaws and waiting for a bullet to find him in the right place. Now he was bound in an Apache camp, offering tactical advice to a woman who had every reason to hate him. "I'm suggesting," Cole said carefully, "that Jessup finding this camp gets everyone killed, including me. Self-preservation's a decent motivator." Sarah's amber eyes searched his face. "Ruth says you told the truth about Sand Creek. Says the letter from your wife confirms you were court-martialed for refusing orders. Ruth reads English." Ruth reads 5 languages and speaks 7. Don't underestimate people based on assumptions. Sarah paused. You stopped soldiers from killing children. Stopped 2. Couldn't stop the rest. The memory tasted like ash. Wasn't enough. It never is. Something shifted in Sarah's expression, not quite trust, but maybe recognition. One survivor to another. If I cut those ropes, will you run? Where would I go? You took my boots. Is that a yes or a no? Cole looked at the women packing the camp. At Abby checking weapons with quick, competent hands. At Maggie glaring at him from across the clearing, her knife prominently displayed. At a little girl, Lily. Ruth had called her helping an older woman load blankets onto a travois. Her movements careful and precise for someone so young. No, Cole said. I won't run. Sarah pulled a knife from her belt. Cole flinched involuntarily, and her mouth quirked in bitter amusement. Relax. I need you functional, not bleeding. She cut the ropes at his wrists in one smooth motion. Blood rushed back into his hands in a wave of needles. Ruth? Sarah called out. The older woman appeared with Cole's boots and what was left of his gun belt empty holster. No weapon. Get him mounted. He rides with the rear guard. Sarah, that's an order. Sarah's voice cut like winter wind. She turned back to Cole. You know how Jessup tracks. You know how he thinks. That makes you useful. But if you make one move, I don't like Maggie has permission to put an arrow through your spine. Understood? Crystal. Good. Sarah walked away, already calling orders to the women dismantling the last shelters. Ruth handed Cole his boots. That went better than expected. She threatened to have me shot. She didn't have Maggie do it immediately. For Sarah, that's practically a warm welcome. Ruth gestured toward the horses. Come on, we've got maybe 2 hours before this canyon becomes a kill box. They moved out in a column that spoke of military precision. Sarah rode point with 2 scouts flanking. The main group traveled in the center women's supplies, the travois carrying their most precious possessions. Cole rode near the rear with Ruth and Maggie, the latter watching him with the focused intensity of a hawk tracking prey. Abby dropped back from the main column, guiding her horse alongside Cole's. How's the shoulder? Hurts less than getting shot. Low bar. She studied his bandages with a critical eye. You pull those stitches, I'm not redoing them. Clear. Clear. Good. Abby hesitated, then spoke quietly enough that only Cole could hear. Sarah's taking a risk keeping you alive. Don't make her regret it. Seems to be the theme of the day. I'm serious. She's been holding this group together through sheer force of will for 3 years. Every decision she makes, people die or survive based on whether she's right. Abby paused. She's always right. But she's tired. Tired people make mistakes. Cole glanced ahead at Sarah's rigid spine, the way she held herself like someone who'd forgotten how to bend. How'd she end up in charge? Her mother was chief, died defending this camp from raiders 2 years ago. Sarah was supposed to die with her, but Ruth dragged her away, made her run while everyone she loved bought them time with their lives. Abby's voice dropped. She's been trying to earn the right to that survival ever since. Before Cole could respond, one of the forward scouts came racing back, her horse lathered with sweat. She spoke urgently to Sarah in Lakota. Sarah's face went stone still. What? Cole asked Ruth. Jessup's not alone anymore. He joined up with the patrol. Ruth's knuckles whitened on her reins. 21 men moving fast, heading straight for the canyon entrance. Sarah wheeled her horse around, addressing the entire group in Lakota. Women checked weapons with practiced efficiency. The column tightened, moved faster. Sarah rode back to the rear guard, her expression carved from granite. Mathison, how long would Jessup need to track us through broken terrain? Cole calculated distances and time. If he's got the patrol with him, they'll move slower than a solo tracker, but they'll have more eyes. Canyon this size with this many people leaving sign? He met her gaze. 4 hours, maybe 5. Less if we leave a clear trail. We can't move faster without exhausting the horses. Sarah's jaw worked. And we can't stop to hide our trail with them this close. There's another option. I'm listening. You don't hide the trail. You give them one they want to follow. Let me double back leave sign heading east. Draw them off while you take the group west. Maggie's horse moved between Cole and Sarah before he'd finished speaking. Absolutely not. He'll lead them straight to us. Or he'll buy us the time we need to disappear. Ruth said quietly, "You're trusting a white man, a cavalry scout, to save us." Maggie's voice shook with fury. "Are you insane?" Sarah held up a hand. "Cole, why would you do this?" "Because sitting on this horse waiting to get caught doesn't appeal to me." "That's not an answer." Cole thought about his wife's grave, about Martha Grayson's dead husband and sons, about all the people he'd failed to save because he was too late, too slow, too broken to matter. He thought about Lily, 7 years old, the last child in a dying camp. "Because I'm tired of watching people die when I could have done something about it," Cole said. The silence stretched. Maggie's hand rested on her knife. Ruth watched Sarah with the patient stillness of someone who'd learned to wait for the important moments. Abby bit her lip, clearly wanting to argue but holding back. Sarah's amber eyes bored into Cole like she was trying to read his soul through his pupils. Whatever she saw there made her curse quietly in Lakota. "If this is a trick," she started, "then Maggie gets to shoot me. I know." Cole kept his voice steady. "But it's not a trick. It's just the only play that works." Sarah turned to Ruth. "Give him a horse. No weapons." "Sarah," Maggie started. "No weapons," Sarah repeated louder. "He draws them off unarmed. If he survives, he finds us. If he doesn't—" She didn't finish. Ruth nodded and moved to gather supplies. Maggie looked like she wanted to argue further, but bit back whatever she was going to say. Sarah guided her horse closer to Cole's, near enough that he could see the exhaustion in her face, the weight she carried in every breath. "There's a box canyon 15 miles west," she said quietly. "Red rock walls, spring-fed pool at the base. We'll be there for 3 days, then moving north. If you're not back by then, we leave without you." "Understood." "And Cole?" Sarah's voice dropped even lower. "If you're lying to me, if you lead them to my people, I will hunt you across this entire territory and make sure your death takes days. Are we clear?" "We're clear." Sarah held his gaze a moment longer, then wheeled her horse back to the front of the column. Ruth returned with a different horse, smaller, faster, built for endurance rather than carrying weight. "There's water in the saddlebag," Ruth said. "And dried meat. Enough for 2 days if you're careful." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You might not survive this." Ruth's weathered face softened slightly. "But you might, you? And if you do, maybe you'll be the first good thing that's happened to us in a long time." Maggie rode up as Ruth moved away. She didn't speak, just stared at Cole with eyes full of hate and something else, maybe hope, maybe fear. She reached into her saddlebag and pulled out a knife, old and well-worn, the handle wrapped in leather that had been gripped by countless hands. "My husband's," Maggie said. "He'd want someone to use it who wasn't afraid to die doing the right thing." She tossed it to Cole. He caught it one-handed, surprised by the weight. "Don't make me regret this." She rode away before Cole could respond. Abby was the last to approach. She checked his bandages one final time, her hands gentle and efficient. "Shoulder's going to hurt like hell when you start moving. Don't tear the stitches." "I'll try." "Don't try. Do it." Abby paused. "Sarah doesn't trust easily. She's giving you a chance most men wouldn't get. Don't waste it." The column started moving again, heading west. Sarah didn't look back. Neither did most of the women. But Lily did. The little girl turned in her saddle and waved small hand moving in the morning light. Cole lifted his own hand in response, feeling something crack in his chest. Then they were gone, disappearing into broken terrain, leaving Cole alone with a horse and a dead man's knife and a choice he'd already made. He turned east and started riding. The trail wasn't hard to fake. Cole had spent years tracking and being tracked. He knew what Jessup would look for: disturbed ground, broken branches, the specific pattern of horses moving in a hurry. He left all of it obvious enough to find, but subtle enough to look real. 2 hours in, he heard them. Voices carried in canyon country, bouncing off walls and amplifying. 20 men made noise no matter how careful they were. Cole dismounted and led his horse up a narrow ravine, finding a position where he could see without being seen. The patrol came into view 5 minutes later, cavalry like he'd expected. Young lieutenant in front, trying to look confident and mostly succeeding. And there, riding slightly ahead, was Jessup. The tracker looked exactly as Cole remembered, lean, weathered, moving with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent more time in wilderness than civilization. He studied the ground like he was reading a book, occasionally gesturing for the patrol to adjust direction. Cole waited until they'd committed to the false trail, then mounted and rode hard in the opposite direction. The first mile was easy. The second was harder. By the third, his shoulder had gone from throbbing to screaming. Abby's stitches held, but each jarring step of the horse sent fresh fire through his upper body. Cole gritted his teeth and kept riding. The sun climbed higher. The terrain shifted from canyon to scrubland, offering less cover, but faster travel. Cole pushed the horse as hard as he dared, knowing that the moment Jessup realized the trail was fake, he'd come hunting. That moment arrived faster than Cole expected. The rifle shot cracked across the scrubland close enough that Cole heard the bullet pass. He kicked the horse into a full gallop, bending low over its neck. 2 more shots both missed, but not by much. Cole risked a glance back. 3 riders, Jessup in front. The rest of the patrol was nowhere in sight, which meant Jessup had figured out the deception and split off with just enough men to make the chase interesting. Another shot. This one clipped the horse's flank, not deep, but enough to make the animal stumble. Cole fought to keep his seat, his wounded shoulder protesting violently. The horse recovered its footing, but it was limping now, losing speed. Cole made a decision that was probably stupid, but definitely necessary. He guided the horse toward a rocky outcrop, dismounted before it had fully stopped, and slapped its rump hard. The animal bolted, still running despite its wound. Cole scrambled into the rocks, Maggie's knife in one hand, looking for any kind of defensive position. The outcrop wasn't much, maybe 15 feet of tumbled boulders providing minimal cover, but it was better than dying in the open. Jessup and his men approached cautiously. Smart. They'd learned not to rush into situations without checking the angles first. "Cole Mathison." Jessup's voice carried across the scrubland. "That you hiding in those rocks?" Cole stayed silent. "Saw your face through the scope. Thought you were dead." Jessup moved closer, using his horse as cover. "Heard you got yourself discharged after Sand Creek. Shooting your own men. That true?" Still silence. "Look, we can do this easy or hard. You come out, we'll take you in peaceful like. Army might even forget about that court-martial if you tell us what we want to know." Jessup paused. "You stay in there. We got all day to wait you out." Cole checked his position. 3 men, all armed with rifles. He had a knife and a shoulder that barely worked. The math wasn't complicated. "What do you want to know?" Cole called out. "Where's the renegade camp you've been riding with?" "Don't know what you're talking about." "Your horse has the same dust pattern as the ones we were tracking. You've been with them." Jessup's voice hardened. "Don't insult my intelligence." "Haven't been with anyone. Got bushwhacked 6 days ago, been wandering since." One of Jessup's men fired. The bullet sparked off rock 2 feet from Cole's head. Message received. "Last chance," Jessup said. "Tell me where they are, or we come in shooting." Cole's mind raced. He could give up Sarah's location, probably survive, maybe even get that amnesty Jessup was offering. Walk away from this with his life intact. He thought about Lily waving goodbye, about Ruth's cautious hope, About Maggie trusting him with her dead husband's knife. About Sarah's amber eyes searching his face for something worth believing in. "Go to hell," Cole said. The shooting started immediately. Cole pressed himself against the rocks as bullets ricocheted around him. Splinters of stone cut his face. His shoulder throbbed with each heartbeat. He gripped Maggie's knife and waited for an opening that probably wouldn't come. Then the shooting stopped. Cole risked a glance around the boulder. Jessup's men were on the ground, not dead unconscious from the look of it, with arrows sprouting from their horses' saddles. The horses themselves were running, spooked by the sudden attack. Jessup knelt with his hands behind his head, his rifle in the dirt 10 feet away. Standing over him with a bow drawn was Maggie. Sarah emerged from behind a different outcrop, her own rifle trained on Jessup. Ruth and Abby appeared from the scrubland, both armed, both moving with the easy confidence of women who'd done this before. "Heard shots," Sarah said, not taking her eyes off Jessup. "Figured you might need backup." Cole climbed out of the rocks, his legs shaking. "Thought you were heading west." "We were." Then Maggie pointed out that sending an unarmed, injured man to face a professional tracker was probably suicide. Sarah's mouth twitched. "She suggested we follow at a distance. See if you were actually leading them away or leading them to us." Maggie lowered her bow slightly. "You didn't run." "No." "You didn't tell him where we were." "No." "You could have saved yourself. Could have bought amnesty with our location." Maggie's voice was rough. "Why didn't you—" Cole met her eyes. "Because I've spent 3 years trying to die for something that mattered. Figured this was close enough." Then Maggie did something Cole didn't expect. She smiled, small, bitter, but genuine. "You're either the bravest fool I've ever met or the stupidest brave man." She turned to Sarah. "What do we do with the tracker?" Sarah studied Jessup with cold calculation. "How many men in your patrol?" Jessup's jaw tightened. "Go to hell." Sarah shot him. The bullet took him in the thigh, deliberate, precise, designed to hurt without killing. Jessup screamed and collapsed, clutching the wound. Sarah worked the rifle's lever, chambering another round. "How many men in your patrol?" she repeated. 20. Jessup gasped. "Jesus Christ, 20 men." "Where are they now?" "Following the false trail. East." "How long before they realize it's fake?" "Hour, maybe 2. Jessup's face had gone white. "Look, I need a doctor." "You need to shut up." Sarah's voice was ice. She glanced at Ruth. "Bandage him. Just enough to keep him breathing. Then tie him to that rock and leave him." "Sarah," Ruth said quietly, "if we leave him alive, he'll tell them everything. If we kill him, we're murderers. We're already outlaws. I won't make us killers too." Sarah's grip tightened on her rifle. "Bandage him. We'll be long gone before he works free." Ruth nodded and moved to tend Jessup's wound. The tracker watched Sarah with something between fear and grudging respect. "You're making a mistake," he said through gritted teeth. "Probably. I make a lot of them." Sarah finally lowered her rifle. "But I can still sleep at night. Can you—" She turned and walked away. Maggie followed, then Abby. Cole started to move, but Ruth caught his arm. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For not running. For not selling us out." "Don't thank me yet. We're not clear." "No. But we're alive. Some days that's enough." Ruth finished bandaging Jessup and started tying him to the boulder. "Go. Sarah will want to move fast." Cole caught up with Sarah as she mounted her horse. She didn't look at him, just stared west toward where her people were waiting. "You came back," Cole said. Maggie insisted. "But you agreed." Sarah finally met his eyes. "I agreed because I wanted to be wrong about you. Wanted to believe that maybe there was one man worth the risk." She paused. "Don't make me regret it." "I'll try not to." "Trying's not good enough. Do better." Sarah kicked her horse into motion. "We've got 2 hours to reach the group and get clear before that patrol realizes what happened. Move." They rode hard through scrubland and broken country. Cole's shoulders screamed, his vision blurred, but he kept pace. Kept moving, because stopping meant dying, and he'd discovered he wasn't quite ready for that anymore. The box canyon appeared as the sun reached its peak. Red walls rose on 3 sides, a spring-fed pool glittering at the base. The rest of the women were there organized and ready to move at a moment's notice. When they saw Sarah and the others return, relief rippled through the group. Lily ran to Sarah, wrapping small arms around her waist. Sarah's face softened, the first real warmth Cole had seen from her. She said something in Lakota that made the child laugh. She asked if I was okay. Sarah translated, seeing Cole's confusion. "I told her I'm always okay, because I have her to come back to." The tenderness in her voice cracked something in Cole's chest. "All right," Sarah called out to the group. "We move in 10 minutes, north toward the timber country. Stay tight, stay quiet, and if you see anything that doesn't belong, you call it out immediately." The women moved with practiced efficiency. Cole started to help, but Abby intercepted him. "You're bleeding through your bandage," she said. "Sit down before you fall down." Cole sat. Abby worked on his shoulder with quick, competent hands, replacing the soaked bandages with fresh ones. Ruth appeared with water and food. Maggie stood nearby, not quite friendly, but no longer hostile. And Sarah watched from across the canyon, her amber eyes tracking Cole's every movement, still calculating, still measuring, still trying to decide if he was worth the gamble she'd made. Cole met her gaze and nodded once. She nodded back. It wasn't trust. Not yet. But it was a beginning. And in a world where everything was ending, beginnings were worth fighting for. They moved north for 3 days straight, stopping only when the horses couldn't continue. Cole rode with the rear guard, his shoulder a constant fire that Abby's fresh bandages couldn't quite smother. Nobody spoke much. The women saved their breath, for watching the horizon, for listening to sounds that didn't belong, for surviving 1 more mile. On the 4th morning, Sarah called a halt near a stand of ponderosa pine. The trees offered cover and a small creek provided water. Women dismounted with visible relief, their faces drawn with exhaustion. "We camp here tonight," Sarah announced in English, then repeated it in Lakota. "Full rest, hot food, we've earned it." Cole slid off his horse and immediately regretted it. His legs buckled. Ruth caught his arm before he hit the ground. "You're running on empty," she said. "When did you last sleep?" Cole couldn't remember. The days had blurred together into a continuous sequence of riding and watching and trying not to fall off his horse. "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar." Ruth guided him to a fallen log. "Sit, eat, sleep, in that order." "Yes, ma'am." Ruth's weathered face crinkled in something almost like a smile. "I'm starting to understand why Sarah didn't let Maggie shoot you. You're stubborn enough to be useful." She walked away before Cole could respond. Abby appeared with dried meat and some kind of flat bread that tasted better than it looked. Cole ate mechanically, his body demanding fuel even if his stomach wasn't interested. Across the clearing, Sarah was organizing the camp with quiet efficiency. She moved from group to group, checking on people, making sure everyone had what they needed. Lily followed her like a shadow, helping where she could, her small face serious with concentration. Maggie approached Cole's log and sat without invitation. She didn't speak for a long moment, just stared at the trees like they held answers to questions she hadn't asked yet. "My husband's name was Thomas," she said finally. "Cherokee. Took me in when my own people threw me out for marrying outside the tribe." Her fingers traced the scar on her eyebrow. "Got this fighting beside him during a raid. Raiders came for our horses. We fought back. He died. I lived." Cole stayed quiet. Some stories didn't need interruptions. "My boys were 12 and 9. Good boys. Brave." Maggie's voice went rough. "The younger one, Jacob, he wanted to be a tracker like his father. Used to practice following me around camp, thought I didn't notice." She paused. "Raiders killed him first. Made Thomas watch. Then they killed the older boy. Then they killed Thomas. I'm sorry, Cole said because there was nothing else to say. I watched you choose to die rather than betray us. Maggie turned to look at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Most men would have saved themselves. You didn't. That means something. Maggie. Let me finish. She pulled something from her belt, a beaded bracelet small clearly made for a child's wrist. This was Jacob's. Made it himself when he was 8, proud of it. She held it out to Cole. I want you to have it. Cole stared at the bracelet. I can't take that. You can. You will. Maggie's voice was firm. Because you proved you're the kind of man who deserves to carry my son's memory. Don't argue with me on this. Cole took the bracelet with careful hands. The beadwork was simple, but precise, red, black, and white in a geometric pattern. He slipped it onto his wrist. It fit snugly warm from Maggie's pocket. Thank you, he said quietly. Maggie stood abruptly. Don't make me regret it. But her voice held no heat. She walked away, her shoulders straighter than they'd been in days. Night fell. Women gathered around fires cooking, talking in low voices, letting themselves relax for the first time since leaving the canyon. Cole found himself sitting with Ruth and Abby, listening to them discuss tribal politics in a mixture of English and Lakota that he couldn't quite follow. Sarah's not eating again, Abby said, nodding toward where their leader sat alone near the edge of camp. 3rd night in a row. She never eats when she's carrying weight, Ruth replied. Thinks if she suffers, the spirits will be more forgiving. That's not how spirits work. Tell her that. I've been trying for 2 years. Ruth sighed. That girl carries more ghosts than any person should. Cole looked across the firelight at Sarah. She sat with her back against a pine tree rifle across her knees, staring into darkness like she expected it to attack. Even at rest, she was coiled ready, unable to let go. She never sleeps either, Ruth continued. Catnaps maybe. Few minutes here and there. But actual sleep, haven't seen it since her mother died. Someone should talk to her, Abby said. Someone should. But it won't be me. She stopped listening to my advice about self-care months ago. Ruth's eyes slid to Cole. Maybe it should be someone new, someone she hasn't learned to ignore yet. That's not my place, Cole said. Your place is wherever you make it. Ruth stood with a grunt. But sitting here watching her destroy herself isn't doing anyone any good, including you. She walked away, leaving Cole alone with the uncomfortable truth that she was right. Cole stood and crossed the camp. Sarah noticed his approach. She noticed everything, but didn't acknowledge him until he was close enough to speak without shouting. You should eat something, Cole said. I'm fine. That's what I told Ruth earlier. She called me a terrible liar. Sarah's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Ruth doesn't pull punches. Neither do you from what I've seen. Cole sat down uninvited a few feet away. Close enough to talk, far enough to retreat if she wanted space. How long since you slept? I sleep. How long since you actually slept, more than 20 minutes at a time? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Why do you care? Because watching you run yourself into the ground makes me nervous. Leaders who don't sleep make bad decisions. Bad decisions get people killed. Cole paused. I've seen it happen. Don't want to see it again. You've known me for 4 days. Don't pretend you understand what I'm carrying. You're right. I don't understand. But I know what guilt looks like. Know what survivor's shame does to a person. Cole touched the bracelet on his wrist. I've been wearing it for 3 years. You're wearing it too. I can see it from here. Sarah's amber eyes fixed on him, sharp and searching. Your wife. Sarah. Different Sarah. Died of fever while I was gone, along with our baby. Cole's voice stayed steady through long practice. I wasn't there. Wasn't there when she needed me most. Been trying to make up for that ever since. You can't make up for the dead. They're gone. I know. But you can honor them by keeping the living safe, by making sure their sacrifice meant something. Cole met her gaze. That's what you're doing. What you've been doing for 2 years. It's enough, Sarah. It has to be enough or you'll break. And if I break, what happens to them? Sarah gestured at the camp. These women trust me to keep them alive, to make the right calls, to be strong enough for all of us. Being strong doesn't mean carrying everything alone. It means knowing when to let others help shoulder the weight. Spoken like someone who's never been responsible for an entire people's survival. You're right again. I've only been responsible for my own survival. And I was so good at it that I rode into the desert looking for a bullet to find me. Cole's voice went quiet. Then I met a group of women who decided I was worth saving, even when I didn't think I was. Seems like maybe they understood something I didn't. Sarah looked away, her jaw working. You don't know what you're talking about. Maybe not. But I know you haven't eaten in 3 days, and you look like you're about to collapse. And I know that these women need you functional more than they need you martyred. I'm not. Yes, you are. You're killing yourself slowly because you think you deserve to suffer for surviving. Cole stood. But your mother didn't die so you could waste away from guilt. She died so you could live. Honor that. He walked away before Sarah could respond, his heart hammering. He'd overstepped. Probably destroyed whatever fragile trust they'd been building. But someone needed to say it, and everyone else was too afraid of her to try. Cole found his bedroll and tried to sleep. It didn't come easy. An hour later, soft footsteps approached. Sarah sat down next to his bedroll, a wooden bowl in her hands. Steam rose from whatever was inside. Ruth made stew, she said. She's angry I haven't been eating. Made me a bowl. Sarah held it out. I can't finish it alone. Thought maybe you'd help. Cole sat up. The stew smelled incredible, rabbit maybe with wild onions, and something earthy he couldn't identify. Sarah handed him the bowl and a carved spoon. He ate half, then passed it back. She ate a few bites, slow and deliberate, like she'd forgotten how food worked. They sat in silence, passing the bowl back and forth until it was empty. My mother's last words were run, Sarah said quietly. She was dying. Knew it. Could have used her last breath to say anything. She chose to make sure I survived. Sarah set the empty bowl aside. I ran. Left her there. Left everyone. Saved myself while they died. You followed orders. I abandoned them. You survived so their deaths would mean something, so someone would be left to carry their memory forward. Cole touched Jacob's bracelet again. That's not abandonment. That's duty. Sarah's shoulders shook. For a moment Cole thought she was laughing, but then he realized she was crying, silent, controlled, like even her grief had to be contained. He didn't know what to do. Didn't know if he should touch her, or give her space, or Sarah leaned against his good shoulder, her weight solid and warm and utterly trusting. Cole froze, then carefully wrapped his arm around her. She didn't pull away. They sat like that for a long time. The camp settled around them. Fires burned low. Women's voices faded to murmurs, then silence. And Sarah Blackwood, who'd carried the weight of her entire people for 2 years without breaking, finally let herself be held. When she pulled away, her eyes were dry, but softer. Thank you. For what? For being honest. For not treating me like I'm made of glass. Sarah stood, offering him a hand up. For not running when you had the chance. Cole took her hand and let her pull him to his feet. Where would I go? This is the first place that's felt like anything in 3 years. It's a camp full of women who didn't trust you a week ago. Yeah, but one of them just shared her stew with me. Figure that's worth something. Sarah's smile was small but genuine. Get some sleep, Cole Mathison. Tomorrow we reach the timber country. It gets harder from here. Looking forward to it. She walked back to her post, her steps lighter than before. Cole returned to his bedroll and for the first time since getting shot, actually slept. He woke to chaos. shouting in Lakota, women running, horses screaming. Cole grabbed Maggie's knife and stumbled out of his bedroll, his mind still foggy with sleep. "What's happening?" he called to Abby as she ran past. "Bear in the horse corral." Cole followed her. The corral was pandemonium. A massive grizzly had to be 8 feet tall was tearing through the fence going after the horses. The animals were panicked, kicking, trying to escape. One had already gone down, its neck broken. Women surrounded the corral with rifles, but nobody was shooting. Too much risk of hitting the horses. Sarah appeared at Cole's side, her face grim. "We shoot, we might hit the horses. We don't shoot, we lose the whole herd." "Where's Lily?" Cole asked. Sarah's face went white. "She was checking the horses before bed. A child's scream cut through the chaos. Lily was in the corral. She'd climbed onto the fence to help with the horses and hadn't gotten down when the bear arrived. Now she was trapped on the top rail, frozen with fear, while the grizzly moved closer. "Nobody shoot!" Sarah screamed in both English and Lakota. "You'll hit Lily!" The bear reared up, massive paws reaching for the child. Lily screamed again. Cole didn't think. He vaulted the fence and ran straight at the bear, yelling at the top of his lungs. The grizzly turned, confused by this new threat. Cole kept yelling, waving his arms, making himself as large and loud as possible. The bear dropped to all fours and charged. Cole dove sideways. 800 pounds of muscle and claws thundered past, missing him by inches. He rolled, came up with Maggie's knife in hand, and threw it with everything he had. The blade buried itself in the bear's shoulder. Not deep enough to kill, but enough to hurt. The grizzly roared and spun, looking for what had stung it. "Lily, run!" Cole shouted. The child didn't move. She was paralyzed with terror. The bear charged again. Cole ran toward Lily instead of away from the bear, grabbed the child off the fence, and threw her over the rail into Ruth's waiting arms. Then the bear's paw caught him across the back. Pain exploded. Cole hit the ground hard enough to see stars. The bear loomed over him, jaws open, ready to finish what it started. 3 rifle shots cracked simultaneously. The grizzly staggered, roared, and collapsed, dead before it hit the dirt. Cole lay on his back, gasping, his shoulder screaming, and his back on fire from the bear's claws. Women poured into the corral. Abby reached him first, her hands already checking for damage. "Don't move," she ordered. "That thing opened you up pretty good." "Lily," Cole managed. "Safe. Ruth's got her." Abby worked on his back with quick, competent hands. "This is going to hurt." She wasn't lying. Cole gritted his teeth as she cleaned the claw marks and started stitching. Sarah appeared in his field of vision, her face pale. "You could have died," she said, "but I didn't." "You threw yourself at a grizzly bear, unarmed, for a child you barely know." Cole tried to shrug and immediately regretted it. Seemed like the thing to do. Sarah stared at him like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Then she did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She leaned down and kissed his forehead, brief, fierce, grateful. "Thank you," she whispered. She stood and walked away, shouting orders to deal with the dead bear and calm the horses. But Cole felt the warmth of that kiss long after she was gone. Maggie retrieved her husband's knife from the bear's shoulder and cleaned it carefully before returning it to Cole. "You're lucky that didn't get you killed." "Seemed lucky it distracted the bear long enough." "Stupid and lucky, dangerous combination." But Maggie was smiling. "You're all right, Mathison, for a white man." High praise. "Don't let it go to your head." Abby finished stitching and wrapped clean bandages around Cole's torso. "You now have matching scars front and back. You're collecting them like badges." "Wasn't planning on it." "Nobody plans on getting mauled by a grizzly. Yet here we are." Abby sat back on her heels. "You're going to hurt for weeks. Those claws went deep. But you'll live." "Good to know." Ruth appeared with Lily. The child broke free and threw herself at Cole, wrapping small arms around his neck. She said something in Lakota, rapid and tearful. "She says you're the bravest person she's ever met," Ruth translated. "Says you're her hero." Cole's throat tightened. "Tell her she's pretty brave herself. Most kids would have fallen off that fence." Ruth translated. Lily hugged him harder, then pulled back and smiled through her tears. Sarah called out orders to break camp. The bear had spooked the horses too badly to stay. They'd move at first light, put distance between themselves and the scent of blood. Cole tried to stand and made it halfway, before his legs informed him that wasn't happening yet. Maggie and Abby hauled him upright and walked him to his bedroll. "Rest," Abby ordered. "We move in 4 hours. You need to be functional by then." Cole slept fitfully, his back burning his dreams full of claws and screaming horses. When he woke, Sarah was sitting nearby keeping watch. She noticed his movement and came closer. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a bear." "Technically you did." Sarah's mouth quirked. "That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen." "You already said that." "It bears repeating." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Lily's never had a father. Lost hers in the same raid that killed Maggie's family. She's been raised by all of us, the whole camp shares responsibility." She paused. "But she's never looked at anyone the way she looked at you tonight." "Sarah, let me finish. You risked your life for her without hesitation, didn't even think about it, just acted." Sarah's amber eyes were intense in the firelight. "That's not something you can fake. That's character. Or stupidity. Both maybe." Sarah smiled. "But it's the kind of stupidity these women have been waiting to see. Proof that not all men are like the ones who destroyed our families." Cole didn't know what to say to that. "We reach the timber country tomorrow," Sarah continued. "It's safer there, harder to track, easier to hide. We'll rest for a few days. Let everyone recover." She met his eyes. "And then we need to talk about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "I mean you can't keep riding with us as a guest. Eventually you'll either leave or you'll stay. And if you stay..." Sarah trailed off. "If you stay, it has to be permanent. All in. No turning back. And if I leave, then you leave. We'll give you supplies, a horse, directions to the nearest settlement. No hard feelings." Sarah's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her. She didn't want him to leave. "And if I stay, then you become one of us. Fully. That means learning our ways, accepting our laws, standing with us against whatever comes." Sarah paused. "It means choosing this life over the one you had before." Cole thought about his old life. Drifting from town to town, hunting outlaws for money that didn't mean anything. Waiting for death to find him in a saloon or a gunfight or the empty desert. 3 years of existing without living. He thought about the past week. Getting shot, getting saved. Learning that people he'd been taught to fear were just people trying to survive. Finding purpose in protecting something that mattered. He thought about Sarah's kiss on his forehead. Maggie's trust. Ruth's wisdom. Abby's care. Lily's hero worship. "I don't need to think about it," Cole said. "I'm staying." Sarah's breath caught. "You're certain?" "More certain than I've been about anything in 3 years. It won't be easy. The women will test you, push you, make you prove yourself over and over until they're satisfied you mean it." "Good. I'd do the same in their position." Sarah studied his face for a long moment. Whatever she saw there made her nod slowly. "Then tomorrow when we reach the timber country, we'll hold a council. Formally accept you into the tribe." She stood. "Welcome home, Cole Mathison." She walked away before he could respond. But Cole felt the weight of those words settle in his chest. Warm, solid, real. Home. He'd been looking for that word for 3 years without knowing it. And he'd found it in the last place he ever expected among women who'd lost everything and decided to build something new from the ashes. Cole closed his eyes and slept, the bracelet on his wrist warm against his skin, his back aching but his heart fuller than it had been since Sarah. His Sarah had died in his arms. The timber country waited, and with it whatever came next. But for the first time in years, Cole wasn't afraid of the future. He was ready for it. The timber country rose before them like a promise, tall pines reaching toward gray sky, thick underbrush offering concealment streams running cold and clear through valleys that hadn't seen soldiers in years. They made camp in a natural hollow, protected on three sides by rock face and forest, defensible, and hidden in equal measure. Sarah called the council for sunset. Cole stood before them, as the light died, surrounded by women who'd lost everything to men like him. 16 faces watched with varying degrees of acceptance, skepticism, and outright hostility. Ruth sat to Sarah's right, Maggie to her left. Abby stood with the younger women, her expression cautiously hopeful. Lily sat near Ruth, watching Cole with open adoration that made his chest tight. Sarah rose her buckskin dress formal despite the trail dust. She'd braided her hair with beads and feathers, the regalia of leadership she rarely wore. When she spoke, her voice carried across the hollow in both Lakota and English. "We gather to decide Cole Mathison's place among us. He's proven himself in action, saved our lives, protected our children, bled for our survival." Sarah paused. "But actions alone don't make family. We must choose to accept him as we were chosen to accept each other." An older woman Cole didn't know stood. She spoke in rapid Lakota. Sarah translated without being asked. "She asks if we're truly prepared to trust a man who wore cavalry blue, who served the government that destroyed our families." "I was discharged dishonorably for refusing to murder civilians," Cole said quietly. "I'm not proud of what I was, but I'm not that man anymore." The woman sat. Another rose younger with scars across both arms that spoke of hard-won survival. "He saved Lily from the bear," she said in accented English. "Threw himself between death and a child he barely knew. That speaks louder than his past." Maggie stood next. The hollow went silent. Everyone knew her hatred of white men, her losses, her rage. "My husband gave me this advice before he died," Maggie said. "Judge people by what they do when no one's watching, when there's nothing to gain and everything to lose." She touched the knife at her belt, the one she'd given Cole, the one he'd returned. "Cole Mathison chose to die rather than betray us, chose to face a grizzly rather than let a child suffer. Those aren't the actions of a man playing a part." She paused. "I vote to accept him." The ripple of shock was visible. If Maggie approved, the rest would follow. One by one, women stood and spoke, some in English, some in Lakota. Some told stories of their losses. Others spoke of hope for the future. A few remained silent, but nodded when Sarah looked their way. When the last woman had spoken, Sarah turned to Cole. "Do you accept our ways, our laws, our protection, and our burdens equally?" "I do." "Do you swear to stand with us against all threats internal and external, even unto death?" "I swear it." "Do you understand that leaving once accepted means exile, that there's no going back to the world you knew?" Cole met her amber eyes. "There's nothing back there I want. Everything I need is right here." Sarah's expression softened for just a moment. Then the leader's mask returned. She pulled a knife from her belt and held out her palm. "Blood oath, the old way." She cut her palm without hesitation. Blood welled dark against her skin. She handed Cole the knife. He cut his own palm, the sting sharp and clean. Sarah gripped his hand, their blood mingling. Her skin was warm, calloused, strong. "By blood we bind you," Sarah said. "By choice we claim you. By oath we make you kin." The women began to sing low, rhythmic, ancient words that predated the wars and the losses and the desperate survival. Cole felt the sound vibrate in his chest, felt the weight of generations settling on his shoulders. When the singing stopped, Sarah released his hand. Welcome to our family, Cole Mathison, such as it is. Such as it is, Cole repeated. Ruth stood and wrapped a blanket around his shoulders, wool heavy, decorated with symbols he didn't recognize yet. This was my son's, she said quietly. He died at 17 defending our winter camp. I want you to have it. Ruth, I can't. You can. You will. Her voice was firm, but kind. He would have liked you, would have respected what you've done. Honor him by accepting it. Cole pulled the blanket close, the weight of it grounding. Thank you. Abby approached with the clay cup filled with something that smelled medicinal and slightly terrifying. Drink, it's tradition. What is it? Better not to ask, just drink. Cole drank. It tasted like earth and smoke and burned all the way down. He managed not to cough barely. Well done, Abby said, laughing. Most people vomit. Night's still young. Lily pushed through the crowd and grabbed Cole's hand. She said something in Lakota, tugging him toward the fire. She wants you to sit with her, Sarah translated. Says you're her family now, and family sits together. Cole let the child pull him to the fire. She sat beside him, chattering in Lakota he couldn't understand, but pretended to follow. Other women joined Maggie, Abby, Ruth, and eventually Sarah, who settled on Cole's other side with a proximity that felt deliberate. You look terrified, Sarah murmured. I just swore a blood oath to people who could kill me in my sleep if I screw up. Little terrifying, yeah. We won't kill you in your sleep. We'd do it in daylight so everyone could watch. Cole laughed despite himself. That's comforting. Wasn't meant to be. But Sarah was smiling, genuine warmth in her eyes. You did well tonight. Spoke honestly. Didn't try to make yourself more than you are. Seemed like the smart play. Smart and honest. Dangerous combination. Sarah's shoulder pressed against his warm through the blanket. Tomorrow we start teaching you our ways. Language, customs, survival skills you don't have yet. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing is. Spoken like someone who's never tried to learn Lakota verb conjugation. The night wore on. Women told stories around the fire, their voices rising and falling in patterns that felt like ritual. Cole caught maybe one word in 10, but understood the emotion underneath: loss and hope, braided together, grief transformed into determination. When Lily finally fell asleep against his side, Ruth gently lifted her and carried her to bed. The crowd thinned. Maggie banked the fires. Abby checked on the horses one final time. Sarah stayed. Walk with me, she said when they were alone. They moved to the edge of camp where the trees started. The night air was cold, carrying the scent of pine and wood smoke. Sarah stopped near a massive ponderosa, her hand resting on the bark. I haven't felt this hopeful in 2 years, she said quietly. It scares me. Why? Because hope is dangerous. Hope makes you believe things might get better. And when they don't, when they fall apart again, it hurts worse than if you'd never hoped at all. Cole understood that. He'd stopped hoping after his wife died, stopped believing in futures that included anything but survival. So what changed? You did. Sarah turned to face him. You showed up dying in the desert and somehow became the first good thing that's happened to us since the world ended. You proved that maybe not all men are monsters, that maybe we can trust again without getting destroyed. That's a lot of weight to put on one person. I know, and I'm sorry for it, but it's true. Sarah stepped closer, near enough that Cole could see the exhaustion still lurking in her eyes, the hope fighting with fear. These women need to believe that tomorrow can be different, that we're not just delaying the inevitable. You gave them that. I'm just one man, Sarah. I can't fix everything that's broken. I'm not asking you to fix everything. I'm asking you to stay. To keep being exactly who you are, honest, brave, stupid enough to fight grizzlies for children who aren't even yours. Sarah's voice dropped. I'm asking you to help me carry the weight, because I can't do it alone anymore. The admission cost her. Cole could see it in the tension of her jaw, the way her hands trembled slightly before she forced them still. Sarah Blackwood didn't ask for help, didn't admit weakness. The fact that she was doing it now meant she trusted him, or was desperate enough to gamble on trust. "You're not alone," Cole said. "Haven't been since you decided to save my life instead of leaving me for the vultures. I'm here. I'm staying. Whatever you need." Sarah's eyes glistened in the starlight. "I need you to promise me something. Name it. If I start to break, if the weight gets too heavy and I can't carry it anymore, I need you to tell me. Don't let me destroy myself trying to be strong enough for everyone." Cole thought about the past week watching Sarah drive herself to exhaustion, refuse food, refuse rest, refuse anything that might make her human instead of a symbol. "I promise. But you have to promise me something too." "What?" "You'll actually listen when I tell you. Won't just ignore it and keep destroying yourself because you think you deserve to suffer." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "That's a hard promise to make." "I know. Make it anyway." "All right. I promise." Sarah held out her hand, not for a handshake, but palm up offering. "Partners." Cole took her hand. Her skin was still warm from the blood oath, her grip strong and sure. "Partners." They stood like that, hands clasped, while the forest settled around them, and the camp slept, and something fragile and new took root between them. Sarah pulled away, first clearing her throat. "We should sleep. Tomorrow starts early." "Sarah." She turned back. "Thank you. For saving my life. For giving me a reason to live it." Sarah's smile was soft and sad and beautiful. "Thank you for proving I was right to save it." She walked back to camp, leaving Cole alone with the trees and the stars, and the overwhelming sense that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't fully understand yet. He returned to his bedroll and slept deeper than he had in years. Morning came with Ruth shaking his shoulder. "Up. Sarah wants to start your training before breakfast." Cole groaned. His back still burned from the bear claws, his shoulder ached, and his palm throbbed where he'd cut it. "What kind of training?" "The kind that keeps you alive. Move." Sarah was waiting near the practice area, a flat space the women had cleared for weapons training. She held 2 wooden practice knives carved and smoothed from use. "You know how to fight," Sarah said without preamble. "I've seen you move, but you don't know how to fight our way. That changes now." She tossed him a practice knife. Cole caught it one-handed. "Our style focuses on speed and efficiency. We can't overpower most opponents, so we don't try. We outthink them, outmaneuver them, strike where they're not looking." Sarah circled him slowly. "Show me your stance." Cole fell into the fighting stance the army had taught him, balanced defensive knife held low and forward. "That's terrible," Sarah said flatly. "You're announcing your intentions, telegraphing every move before you make it." She adjusted his grip, moved his feet, repositioned his shoulders. Her hands were quick and impersonal. "Better. Now attack me." Cole hesitated. "I'm not going to break Mathison. Attack me." He lunged, testing. Sarah slipped aside like smoke and cracked her practice knife against his ribs, hard enough to hurt. "Dead. Try again." They went for an hour. Cole attacked Sarah, countered, and he accumulated bruises with depressing regularity. But he was learning, watching how she moved, how she anticipated, how she used his momentum against him. Other women gathered to watch. Some offered advice in Lakota. Others laughed when Cole hit the dirt for the 15th time. "You're getting better," Sarah said, breathing hard. "Slower learner than I'd like, but better. I'll work on it." "See that you do. Maggie's going to teach you tracking this afternoon. If you think I'm tough, wait until she gets started." Sarah walked away, tossing her practice knife to Abby. Cole stood there, catching his breath, cataloging new bruises, and feeling more alive than he had in years. Maggie's tracking lesson was brutal. She took him into the forest and proceeded to disappear, leaving Cole to find her using whatever skills he possessed. It took him 2 hours to locate her the first time. She was unimpressed. A child could have found me faster, she said. Again. By the fourth attempt, Cole was getting the hang of it, reading broken twigs, disturbed leaves, the subtle signs of passage that Maggie left deliberately. When he found her on the seventh try in under 20 minutes, she actually smiled. Better. You might survive out here after all. That evening, Ruth started teaching him Lakota. They sat by the fire while she went through basic phrases, correcting his pronunciation with gentle patience. Your accent is terrible, Ruth said, but your willingness to learn counts for something. How long until I'm fluent? Years. But you'll be conversational in months if you practice. Ruth paused. Sarah speaks 5 languages fluently. She'll help once she's satisfied you're serious about staying. I'm serious. I know, she knows too. But she's been disappointed before. She needs to see consistency before she fully invests. The days fell into rhythm. Morning weapons training with Sarah, afternoon tracking and hunting with Maggie, evening language lessons with Ruth. Abby checked his wounds daily, pronouncing them healing faster than expected. Lily followed him everywhere, chattering in Lakota, and broken English, teaching him words Ruth hadn't gotten to yet. 3 weeks passed. Cole's Lakota improved from terrible to merely bad. His knife work progressed enough that Sarah occasionally had to work to disarm him. Maggie grudgingly admitted he was becoming a decent tracker. And every evening after the camp settled, Sarah would find him, and they'd walk to the edge of the trees. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just stood in companionable silence. 2 people who understood that some wounds didn't heal, but you learned to carry them anyway. On the 24th night, Sarah brought a blanket and spread it under the ponderosa. She sat and patted the ground beside her. Sit. I want to tell you something. Cole sat. My mother used to say that the spirits send us exactly what we need when we need it, in forms we don't recognize, until it's too late to refuse. Sarah stared up through the pine branches at the stars beyond. I think she was talking about you. I'm not a spirit's gift, Sarah. I'm just a man who got lost. Maybe that's what gifts look like. Lost things finding their way home. Sarah turned to look at him, her amber eyes bright in the darkness. I wasn't sure about you at first. Thought maybe you were playing a part waiting for the right moment to betray us. But I was wrong. How do you know? Because you're still here. You've had a dozen chances to leave to run to report us to the nearest garrison. You haven't taken any of them. Sarah's voice softened. You chose us. Keep choosing us, every single day. It's not a hard choice. It is, though. You're giving up everything you were for the possibility of something new. That takes courage most people don't have. Cole thought about that. About the life he'd left behind, empty, aimless, waiting for death. About the life he'd found here, hard, dangerous, but full of purpose and belonging. I'm not giving anything up. I'm trading something worthless for something that matters. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised them both. She leaned her head against his shoulder, the same way she'd done weeks ago when she'd finally let herself cry. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For mattering. For making this easier to carry. Cole carefully wrapped his arm around her shoulders, half expecting her to pull away. She didn't. She settled closer, her weight warm and solid and trusting against his side. They sat like that until the fire burned low and the camp slept, and the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. When Sarah finally pulled away, her eyes were dry but softer. I should sleep. Tomorrow's going to be hard. Why? Because we're moving again. Scouts reported military activity 30 miles east. Not looking for us specifically, but close enough to worry. Sarah stood brushing pine needles from her dress. We leave at dawn. Pack light move fast. Understood. Sarah started to walk away, then paused. Cole? Yeah. I'm glad you stayed. She disappeared into the darkness before he could respond. Cole sat alone under the ponderosa, the blanket still warm from her presence, and felt something shift in his chest, something that hadn't moved in 3 years. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying, impossible to ignore. He was falling for Sarah Blackwood, the warrior chief with amber eyes and shoulders strong enough to carry the weight of her dying people. Falling for a woman who'd saved his life and given him purpose and trusted him with her grief. And that was either the best thing that had happened to him or the thing that would finally break them both. Cole didn't know which, but he knew he wasn't running. Not from this. Not from her. Not from the future they might build together if they survived long enough to try. He stood and returned to Camp Ruth's blanket wrapped around his shoulders. Jacob's bracelet warm against his wrist and his heart fuller than it had been since the day he'd buried his wife and sworn he'd never care about anything again. Turned out he'd been wrong about that. Wrong about a lot of things. But right about staying. And that was enough. Dawn broke cold and gray. The camp moved with practiced efficiency, shelters collapsed supplies, packed horses saddled before the sun cleared the horizon. Cole worked alongside Maggie, loading travois, checking cinches, doing the 100 small tasks that kept a moving camp functional. Sarah appeared as they finished the last horse. Her face was drawn, exhaustion evident despite a full night's sleep. Scouts just returned. Military's closer than we thought, maybe 20 miles moving this direction. Same patrol from before? Cole asked. Different, larger, 50 men at least. Sarah's jaw tightened. Someone reported unusual activity in this area. They're doing a sweep. Maggie cursed in Cherokee. 50 men. We can't fight that. We're not fighting. We're disappearing. Sarah raised her voice, switching to Lakota. The women gathered quickly, faces tense but controlled. Sarah spoke rapidly, gesturing north and west. When she finished, they dispersed without argument. What did you tell them? Cole asked. That we split into 3 groups. Smaller parties are harder to track, easier to hide. We rendezvous in 5 days at the old trading post near Eagles Pass. Sarah paused. You're with me, Ruth, Abby, and Lily. Maggie leads the 2nd group. An elder named Dakota leads the 3rd. Why split me from Maggie? I'm more useful with someone who knows I can track. Because if something happens to my group, I need you alive to find the others. You're the only one besides Maggie who can track in hostile territory. Sarah's eyes met his. And because I trust you to keep Lily safe if I can't. The weight of that trust settled on Cole's shoulders. Understood. They split within the hour. Maggie's group headed northeast, taking the stronger horses and most of the weapons. Dakota's group went due north with the supplies and elders. Sarah's group, 5 people total, went northwest toward rougher country where pursuit would be difficult. They rode hard for 6 hours before Sarah called a halt near a stream. The horses needed water and rest. Lily had gone silent miles ago, her small face pinched with exhaustion. We'll rest for an hour, Sarah said. No fires, cold food. Then we move again. Ruth helped Lily down from her horse and settled her against a tree with dried meat and water. The child ate mechanically, her eyes already closing. Within minutes, she was asleep. Abby checked the horses, while Sarah studied their back trail with the focused intensity of someone expecting trouble. Cole approached quietly. You should eat something, he said. Later. Sarah. I said later. Her voice was sharp. Then she softened. Sorry, I'm just scared. I know. So am I. Sarah turned to look at him. You don't show it. Years of practice hiding it. Doesn't mean it's not there. Cole moved closer, lowering his voice so the others wouldn't hear. You don't have to carry this alone. That's why you brought me. Let me help. How you can't make 50 soldiers disappear. Can't change the fact that we're running out of places to hide. Sarah's control was fraying. I've kept them safe for 2 years by staying ahead, staying hidden. But it's getting harder. Every time we run, we lose a little more ground. Then maybe it's time to stop running. Sarah's eyes flashed. And do what fight 50 men with 5 people. That's suicide. Not fight. Negotiate. The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah stared at Cole like he'd suggested they sprout wings and fly. Negotiate, she repeated flatly. With the army that's been hunting us for 2 years. The army that destroyed our families. That murdered our people. Not with the army. With one officer who might listen. Cole's mind was working fast, pulling together pieces of a plan that was probably insane, but might be their only option. I knew a captain during the war. Good man, fair. Hated what happened at Sand Creek as much as I did. Last I heard, he was stationed at Fort Garland. And you think he'll just let us go out of the goodness of his heart? No. But I think he'll listen if we offer him something he wants more than capturing a group of women who haven't committed any crimes. Sarah's eyes narrowed. What could we possibly offer? Information. The Dawson gang I was tracking when I got shot. They've been raiding supply lines for 6 months. The army wants them badly. I know where they winter. Cole paused. We trade that information for safe passage. A guarantee that your people can settle somewhere without being hunted. You'd betray outlaws to save us. I'd betray anyone to save you. The words came out more honest than Cole intended. The Dawsons are murderers. They deserve what's coming. Your people don't. Sarah studied his face, searching for deception or hidden agenda. Whatever she saw made her exhale slowly. That's a dangerous gamble. Everything we do is dangerous. At least this way we're choosing the risk instead of waiting for it to find us. Ruth approached before Sarah could respond. Soldiers, half a mile back, moving fast. Every head turned. Abby was already saddling horses. Cole moved to wake Lily, but the child was already stirring her survival instincts, honed by 2 years of running. How many? Sarah asked. 10, maybe 12. Advance scouts for the main force. Ruth's weathered face was grim. They're tracking us specifically. Someone's guiding them. Jessup, Cole said. Has to be. He survived, caught up with the patrol, told them about us. Sarah's hand went to her rifle. We can't outrun 12 men on fresh horses, not with Lily. Then we don't run. Cole checked Maggie's knife at his belt. We set an ambush. Take them down before they report back. Cole, that's the only option that doesn't end with us caught or dead. You know I'm right. Sarah's jaw worked. She looked at Lily, at Ruth, at Abby, then back at Cole. If we do this, we do it my way. No killing unless absolutely necessary. Sarah, no killing. We disable, disarm, and disappear before they recover. That's the line I won't cross. Her voice was iron. I won't make us murderers, not even for survival. Cole wanted to argue, knew that mercy might get them killed, but he also knew that Sarah needed this boundary, needed to believe they were still the good people fighting bad circumstances. Your way, he agreed. What's the plan? Sarah moved fast, directing them into positions with the tactical precision that had kept her people alive for 2 years. Ruth and Abby took high ground with rifles positioned to create crossfire without risk of hitting each other. Cole hid in the stream bed where the scouts would have to cross. Sarah positioned herself with Lily behind a fallen log, the child clutching a knife with white-knuckled determination. They waited. The soldiers appeared 15 minutes later, 12 men in cavalry blue, moving cautiously but not cautiously enough. And their riding point was Jessup. His leg was bandaged where Sarah had shot him, but he sat his horse with the same predatory focus Cole remembered. Jessup held up a hand. The patrol stopped. He dismounted and examined the ground near the stream, reading the signs of their rest stop with professional competence. They were here, Jessup called out. No more than an hour ago. 5 people, 4 horses heading northwest. The lieutenant in charge couldn't have been more than 25, moved his horse forward. How far ahead? Hard to say, but close, maybe 3 miles. Jessup remounted. We push hard. We'll have them by sunset. Cole waited until half the patrol had entered the stream. Then he moved. He came up behind the rearmost soldier, yanked him from his saddle, and put Maggie's knife to his throat. Nobody move, or he dies. The patrol spun, reaching for weapons. Ruth's rifle cracked a warning shot that sent a hat flying. Abby fired next, close enough to a horse's hooves that the animal reared and dumped its rider. "Drop your weapons," Sarah called from behind the log. "Now, or the next shots don't miss." The young lieutenant's hand hovered over his pistol. Jessup was already calculating odds, looking for an opening. Cole pressed the knife harder against the soldier's throat, feeling the man's pulse hammer beneath the blade. "Don't be stupid," Cole said. "You're outgunned and outmaneuvered. Drop the weapons and you live." "Cole Mathison." Jessup's voice was cold. "Should have known you'd turn traitor eventually. Should have known you'd survive getting shot. Guess we both have talents." The lieutenant made his decision. He unbuckled his gun belt and dropped it in the stream. "Stand down, that's an order." "Sir, we can take them," one soldier started. "I said stand down, Private." The lieutenant's voice was firm. "Guns in the water, slow and careful." Reluctantly, the patrol complied. Weapons splashed into the stream, pistols, rifles, knife belts. Sarah emerged from behind the log, her rifle trained on Jessup specifically. "Off the horses," she ordered. "Hands where I can see them." They dismounted. Cole released his hostage and moved to collect weapons, while Abby and Ruth kept rifles trained on the group. Sarah approached the lieutenant, studying his face with cold assessment. "What's your name?" she asked. "Lieutenant Marcus Wade, ma'am. 7th Cavalry, Fort Garland Garrison. You know who we are. I know you're the group we've been tracking for 3 months. Renegade Indians, they said. Hostile and dangerous." Wade paused. "Though I'm starting to think that description was incomplete. We're not hostile. We're survivors trying to stay alive." Sarah lowered her rifle slightly. "You have family, Lieutenant?" Wade hesitated. "Wife and daughter. Back in Missouri." "Then you understand why I'll do anything to protect mine." Sarah gestured at the other women, at Lily watching from behind the log. "These are my family. All that's left after your government destroyed everything else." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sand Creek," Cole said quietly. 3 years ago, Colonel Chivington ordered cavalry to attack a peaceful camp. Killed 300 people, mostly women and children. These women are the survivors. Wade's face went pale. "I heard about Sand Creek. That was different units, different command. Different uniforms, same army." Sarah's voice was hard. "The one hunting us now, the one you're serving." "Ma'am, I'm just following orders." "So was Chivington." Sarah paused, then made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. "I'm going to let you go. All of you. Take your horses, leave your weapons. Ride back to Fort Garland and deliver a message to Captain James Morrison." Wade blinked. "Captain Morrison. Tell him Cole Mathison has information about the Dawson Gang's winter camp. Tell him I'm willing to trade that information for guaranteed safe passage and land rights for my people." Sarah's eyes were fierce. "And tell him if he refuses, if he sends more soldiers after us, we won't be this merciful next time. You expect me to believe you'll just let us walk away? I expect you to recognize an opportunity when it's handed to you. You get to return alive with valuable intelligence about our location and numbers. We get time to move before you can organize another pursuit." Sarah lowered her rifle completely. "That's the trade. Take it, or we can do this the hard way." Wade looked at his men, at the weapons in the stream, at Sarah's unwavering gaze. "All right, we'll deliver your message, but I can't guarantee Captain Morrison will agree to negotiate. That's his choice to make, just like this is mine." Sarah stepped back. "Mount up, head south. If I see any of you again before the captain responds, the deal's off." The soldiers scrambled for their horses. Jessup was the last to mount, his eyes locked on Cole. "You're making a mistake," Jessup said. "These people are fugitives. Helping them makes you one too." "Already was one. Court-martialed, remember?" Cole met his stare. "But at least I can sleep at night." "Can you?" Jessup's jaw tightened. He wheeled his horse and followed the patrol south, leaving their weapons scattered in the stream. Sarah watched until they disappeared into the trees. Then her legs gave out. Cole caught her before she hit the ground. She was shaking, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. "I've got you. You did good." "I let them go. That was insane." "That was brilliant. You gave them a reason to help instead of hunt. Changed the dynamic completely." Ruth and Abby approached, rifles still ready. Lily ran to Sarah and wrapped small arms around her waist, saying something rapid in Lakota. "She says you're the bravest person alive," Ruth translated. "She's not wrong." Sarah managed a weak laugh. "I'm the most terrified person alive, just good at hiding it." They collected the weapons from the stream and redistributed them. 4 extra rifles, 6 pistols, ammunition, and supplies the soldiers had abandoned in their haste to leave. Then they mounted and rode hard, putting distance between themselves and the confrontation site before the patrol could change their minds. They made camp that night in a cave system Ruth knew, hidden and defensible. Abby got a small fire going, while Ruth prepared food. Lily fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by fear and relief in equal measure. Sarah sat outside the cave, staring at stars she couldn't quite see through the clouds. Cole found her there, wrapped in Ruth's blanket, her shoulders tight with tension that wouldn't ease. "You think Morrison will agree?" she asked without turning. "I think he'll consider it. He's fair-minded, hated the massacres. If anyone at Fort Garland will listen, it's him. And if he doesn't, then we keep running, keep surviving. Keep looking for the next opportunity." Cole sat beside her. "We're not out of options. We're just out of easy ones." Sarah was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. "I'm so tired, Cole. Tired of running. Tired of being afraid. Tired of making decisions that could get everyone killed. I know. I don't know how much longer I can do this." Cole took her hand, cold and trembling, and held it between both of his. "Then let me help carry it. That's why I'm here. That's why you brought me. You've already done so much." "Not nearly enough." Cole's thumb traced circles on her palm. "You saved my life, Sarah. Gave me a reason to live it. Let me return the favor. Let me stand with you whatever comes next." Sarah turned to look at him, her amber eyes bright with unshed tears. "What if it's not enough? What if we do everything right and still lose? Then we lose together, but we don't give up, not while we're still breathing." Sarah leaned into him, her forehead resting against his shoulder. Cole wrapped his arms around her and held on, feeling the tremors that shook her body, the fear she'd been carrying alone for too long finally finding release. "I think I'm falling in love with you," Sarah whispered. "And it terrifies me." Cole's breath caught. "Why?" "Because everyone I've ever loved has died. My mother, my sister, everyone." Her voice broke. "I can't lose you too. I won't survive it." "You won't have to. I'm not going anywhere." Cole pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "I love you, Sarah Blackwood. Have since you offered me freedom instead of chains. Since you trusted me with your people's lives. Since you let me see the woman behind the warrior." "Cole." He kissed her. Soft, gentle, asking permission with the pressure of his lips against hers. Sarah froze for a heartbeat, then kissed him back with desperate intensity, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Sarah's tears were falling freely. "I'm still terrified," she said. "So am I. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you." Sarah laughed through her tears. "That's the most romantic, terrible logic I've ever heard." "It's true, though. I know. That's what makes it terrible." Sarah kissed him again, slower this time, savoring the moment. We're probably both going to die doing something stupid and brave. Probably. But at least we'll die together. Promise. Promise. They sat like that, wrapped in each other and Ruth's blanket, while the fire burned low in the cave behind them, and the future waited with all its terrible possibilities and impossible hopes. 5 days later, they reached Eagle's Pass. Maggie's group arrived first, intact and unharmed. Dakota's group came in the next morning, tired but safe. The reunion was joyful women embracing, checking on each other, sharing stories of narrow escapes and close calls. That afternoon, a single rider approached under a white flag. Sarah recognized him immediately. Captain James Morrison, older than Cole, had described, but with the same steady bearing and honest eyes. He dismounted 50 yards from camp and waited, hands visible, making no threatening moves. Cole walked out to meet him. Sarah followed, despite Cole's protests. "Captain," Cole said. "Been a long time." 3 years, Mathison. Heard you died after the court-martial." Morrison's eyes moved to Sarah. "You must be Chief Blackwood. Lieutenant Wade delivered your message." "And—" Sarah's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "And I brought a counteroffer." Morrison pulled papers from his saddlebag. "The Dawson gang has been terrorizing this territory for 6 months. If your information leads to their capture, the Army will grant your people settlement rights on unclaimed land near the Wyoming border. Protected status. No forced relocation." "In writing?" Sarah asked. Morrison handed her the papers. "Signed by my commanding officer. Binding as long as the intelligence is good." Sarah scanned the documents, her limited English struggling with the legal language. Cole read over her shoulder and nodded. "It's legitimate. Everything you asked for." "Why?" Sarah looked at Morrison. "Why help us?" "Because I'm tired of hunting people who've done nothing wrong except survive. Because Sand Creek was a stain on this Army's honor that I can't wash away, but maybe I can make one thing right." Morrison paused. "And because Cole Mathison is one of the most honorable men I've ever known. If he vouches for you, that's enough for me." Sarah's throat tightened. She looked at Cole, at the women gathered behind them, at Lily peeking around Ruth's skirts. "The Dawson gang winters in a box canyon 40 miles northeast of here. Red rock walls, single entrance spring water. They've been using it for years because it's defensible." Morrison nodded. "I'll need more specific directions." Cole provided them, drawing a rough map in the dirt with a stick. Morrison copied it carefully, asking clarifying questions, making sure he had everything needed. "This is good intelligence," Morrison said when they finished. "Should be enough to end them." He rolled up his notes and stood. "I'll send word when it's done. Until then, head north. Stay out of sight. The settlement land will be waiting when this is over." He mounted and rode away without another word. Sarah stood there holding the papers, hardly daring to believe it was real. "We're free. Actually free." "Not yet. Not until Morrison confirms the Dawsons are captured and the land is officially ours." But Cole was smiling. "But yeah, we're close." The women erupted in celebration when Sarah shared the news, singing, dancing tears of relief and joy. Lily hugged Cole so hard he could barely breathe. Maggie clapped him on the shoulder with enough force to bruise. Ruth smiled wide enough to crack her weathered face, and Sarah kissed him in front of everyone, claiming him publicly as hers. They moved north slowly, taking their time, no longer running from pursuit, but traveling toward a future. 3 weeks later, a messenger found them, with confirmation the Dawson gang was captured, the land was theirs, the papers were filed. They were home. The settlement started small. Structures built from timber and stone gardens planted a corral for the horses. Women who'd spent 2 years running finally put down roots and dared to believe they might stay. Cole married Sarah in a ceremony that blended her traditions with vows he wrote himself. Ruth performed the ritual, her voice strong despite her age. Maggie stood witness, her eyes bright with tears she'd never acknowledge. Lily scattered sage and wildflowers, her laughter ringing through the valley. And when Sarah whispered, "I love you," against his lips. Cole knew he'd finally found what he'd been searching for in all those empty miles of drifting. Purpose, belonging, home. 6 months later, Sarah told him she was pregnant. Cole held her while she cried happy tears and terrified tears, and every emotion in between. "We're going to be parents. We're going to be terrible at it," Sarah said, laughing. "Probably, but we'll figure it out together." Their daughter was born in spring, healthy and loud and perfect. They named her Hope because that's what she represented, proof that survival wasn't the end, but the beginning. Proof that broken things could rebuild. Proof that love could grow in the ashes of loss. Other women found partners over the years, settlers, traders, men who proved themselves worthy through actions instead of words. The tribe grew. Children filled the valley with noise and life and laughter. And Cole Mathison, who'd ridden into the desert looking for death instead, found everything worth living for. He'd been lost, dying, broken beyond repair. But a woman with amber eyes and shoulders strong enough to carry the weight of her people had decided he was worth saving. Had given him a second chance when he didn't deserve it. Had loved him despite every reason not to. And together they'd built something impossible. A home. A family. A future that honored the dead by refusing to surrender to the darkness that had taken them. Cole stood on the ridge overlooking their valley, his daughter sleeping against his chest, his wife working in the garden below, and knew with absolute certainty that he'd made the right choice. Not to run, not to die, but to stay, to fight, to love. And that made all the difference.